From EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in Worth Whitehall, Pennsylvania, this is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Good Sunday morning to another edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, December 4th. We are now heading toward our pattern change that was expected for a while, but it is going to be delayed by a couple of days. That is true. No, it is not the end of the world, and yes, it is still coming. It's just a matter of, well, I'll show you here in the video exactly what changed here in the past week. Listen, just like we do in, if I put a long-range outlook out, say in November, and it's for the next 5 to 6 weeks. If it's going to be exactly the same for the next 5 to 6 weeks, there is no point in me doing it every single week. Actually, I do it several times a week. I just do it privately in the premium form, Monday and Wednesday, and again on Friday. There's adjustments to be made when things change a little bit. Same thing with daily forecast. If my forecast I put out on a Monday is going to be correct for the entire week, there's no sense in me doing it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because it's going to be the same, right? Well, it's not. That's how it works. I mean, the weather changes a little bit, and there's some things that I can show you why that changed, and the pattern change is not going to start at the beginning of the second week of December. It's going to be at the end of the second week of December. However, you can still get snow this week, and I'll show you that here in today's outlook. So our long range, this just changed since Friday. If I was sitting here on Friday morning writing this long-range outlook, I would have not written this any differently, because at the time, every available piece of guidance was suggesting that once we hit that cold front on Wednesday, once that moved through, that on Thursday and beyond, it's slightly below to below average, and that it remains that way for the next 2 weeks, okay? Well, it's not going to be right around the 8th. It's going to be toward the end of this period, maybe 13th, 14th, where you get colder than average. Actually, probably about the 12th, 13th time frame is when it's looking like as of this morning, okay? So it's like 4 days behind. Big deal, okay? Not a big deal. I know some people are really, really into snow, and I get it. When I was younger, I was really into snow too. I'm 46 years old now. I couldn't care less about snow. I have no skin in the game with that. I'd rather not have it, because that means I have to remove it. And when you remove snow, you get back pain, and it lasts several days, and it's not fun. I have to start getting my kids to do it, so I don't have to worry about that anymore, right? But it does look like this pattern change is going to occur, and we're going to have consistently slightly below average temperatures after that point. And that's going to go into at least early January. So it's going to be lasting for a while, and the pattern change is, in fact, coming. It's just going to be about 4 days later than we thought originally, okay? So that's how that is, and I'll show you why that is, okay? So average snowfall, this is the updated chart for December and January now, since we are no longer in November. Here's what average snowfall is in December in the left column, and this is the correct image with the latest CLIMO period between 1991 and 2020 that this is based off of. So this is all current data and the latest data for this. So this is what December is on the left. You see January in most places doubles, okay? So it goes up a lot for what average is supposed to be in each month. And then February goes up even higher yet. That's probably our snowiest month across the entire region. But you can see most areas are doubling their output here from one month to the next. Still not a tremendous amount of snow expected in December, but there is at least some accumulating snow, moderate accumulated snow, that is expected during this month. So so far this year, though, we are behind because November didn't really produce very much, okay? So we had that one storm that was just after mid-month, and immediately after mid-month, and would just produce this amount of snow, and this is what normal should be so far to this point. So most areas are very, very, very slightly below average, not a real big deal, but Scranton's about 3 inches behind here so far, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre area. The rest of the region is, it wasn't really expecting too much anyway. But that can be made up very quickly, right? So we're going to talk briefly here about the Madden-Julian oscillation, because there isn't going to be a real effect on the pattern as going forward with the Madden-Julian oscillation. This is the measure of the best convection globally along the just north of the equator on the tropical convergence zone there, about 5 degrees north of the equator. And right now we are in the circle of death, which is this middle area right here. So all these different faces mean something. That when you're in the middle and it collapses into the circle of death, that means tropical forcing really doesn't have a big hand in the pattern, okay? This is the GFS extended on the left. This is the European weeklies on the right, and they're both doing the same thing, keeping this in the circle of death straight through the end of, actually, the early part of January, at least, until it runs out of range, right? And there's no sign that it's going to escape the circle of death here. There was some indications earlier that, at least by the GFS camp, that it was going to, oops, I got this, man, I'll tell you what, this marker I got to figure out because it constantly draws these huge, is that better? Well, a little better. Okay. It had it going into phase 6 and 7 eventually. Okay, so that is no longer happening. It's keeping it in here in the circle of death, just like the European weeklies are. So that means the tropical forcing is going to have very little effect on the pattern, the overall pattern. There's going to be other extraneous other forces are going to be working to make what the pattern is, okay? Most notably, in near term, you've heard about the Greenland block, and that's been thrown out there a lot ad nauseum. And there is a block there, and it's going to behave differently over the next month. It's going to stay for an extended period, which is going to give us those extended cold temperatures. It's just going to be a little bit delayed. As far as a pattern change, when I talk about pattern change and pattern shift, okay, and I've used this graphic in the past, to define a pattern shift or pattern change. A pattern change refers to significant changes in the North American continent with regard to the 500 millibar height anomalies and the resultant change in temperature patterns. Although snow chances and probabilities will increase during this period, accumulated snowfall is not a metric to define a pattern change, no matter how much you want it to do so, okay? So if you're going into a cold pattern for, say, a couple weeks, it doesn't mean you're going to be cold and snowy necessarily. And we don't use that metric to define if it's a pattern change. It just means that the pattern's going to change in the Northern Hemisphere and North America specifically. That's going to change from one pattern to another and remain in that pattern for a while, okay? So that is basically what we're headed to. So let's take a look at the upper air pattern. This is going to loop through here. And I want to go back and stop this because I just want to start off where we're at. So this is the morning of December 10th. Now we might have a little snow event here at the end of the week, which I'll get into in a second. Okay, this is going to be like a thread the needle situation, but it's there. Okay, now here's what the changes were that kept this from being a December 8th change and is making more like a 12th or 13th change. Okay, you have this big ridge out here in the North Atlantic, right? In response to that, deep trough in the western United States. So here is how the jet stream is going to go, okay, initially. That's how the jet stream is initially. And because of that, this is a negative PNA, right? It's a very, well, this is not going to, again, my pen's a little bit too big here. This is a negative PNA, right? So that means the ridge out in the western United States is not there. You have a trough in the western U.S. Now, you do have, this is an overrunning pattern initially, and I'll try to move this forward a little bit again, just so you can see how this is going to set up beyond this point. And we'll stop it right there. Okay. So now this is out the 11th, and again, you got a deep trough out here. Your pattern's more like this. It's more like an overrunning pattern here that we're going to get into for the last couple of days of the second week of December. And then after, you still see higher heights that are still in place over our region, which is going to lead to some milder air, right? Not mild. We're just going to have a storm that's just going to be milder ahead of a storm coming in that's probably going to cut right around the 12th or 13th. That was one of our winter storm signals. It might not be a winter storm. It doesn't look like it's going to be a winter storm in that one. The ones after that, maybe, okay? So again, moving this forward from where we had this before, and we take this out in time and we go past mid-month. I think past mid-month, the pattern's going to get much better. Here is mid-month, and you're still you're still negative PNA. And then we're going to stop it right about here. Okay. Now, when we get out here past mid-month, this is the overnight 17th to the 18th, right? You now have changes out here. You no longer have a negative PNA out here. This is a slightly positive PNA, and your jet flow is more like this, okay? So that means you have cold air in the eastern U.S. as indicated by the lower heights, and you also have a storm threat in here past mid-month. So if this is the case, and this is the European ensemble that I'm using there, the pattern will improve once we get past mid-month. It's not going to be the greatest. It's workable, at least for part of week 2. It's not going to be a complete loss. Again, we have something maybe coming at the end of this week here that I'm going to discuss. But if you don't understand how these 500 millibar charts work, the big thing here is the negative NAO, right? Everybody's been talking about that. Well, is it not going to materialize now? Yes, it is. It is. A west-based negative NAO is there, and this is past mid-month, so it's still there once we get into the second half of the month too. So I think if you're going to have anything bigger or a more likely threat, it's going to be after mid-month. But again, you can get something thread the needle before that, and that would be one of those chances. Are going to be the end of this week. Here is if you're a charts person, don't really understand the 500 millibar charts, which I don't expect you to anyway. The Arctic Oscillation is your cold air source, right? And it's as long as it's negative, that means you have cold air bleeding into the U.S. So this is expected to be negative all the way through the end of the ensemble run, which goes all the way out to the 19th. Okay, so this is, and it's probably going beyond this. I'm just saying it's just showing this is an extended period of below. A negative Arctic oscillation for this entire period. So we have the cold air that's going to be available, that's going to stick in for a while, right? North Atlantic oscillation, that's a negative NAO, right? And this is going to be negative for this entire period also, it looks like. So this is an extended period of that block in place over Greenland or near Greenland. And at the same time, we have that negative PNA initially. This is the trough in the western United States, and you need to get this at least to average to be workable, and the mean here is where I'm following this line here. See how it's going to neutral, perhaps neutral positive once we get past mid-month. That is when it gets out here in this range. That's when it's going to be a little bit more workable on the East Coast to get more organized, juicier storms that could be snow with that cold air in place. When it's out here, it's not the best because you have the Pacific not working in your favor. So what happened that this delayed? Okay. When we go back to this here, this Northern Pacific ridge was a little bit stronger than anticipated, and that goes all the way back into the other side of the world. And when changes happen in the other side of the world, we have a negative East Asian mountain torque that affected that actually hung around a couple days longer. All right, and that affects the downstream ridges and valleys and troughs, whatever. So this ridge was able to pump up a little bit more, which made a little bit deeper of a trough in the western United States. Remember, it was supposed to be a little bit more flatter here at this point, and it wasn't. So we got a big trough here now, and the resultant pattern of that, this big ridge out here, you get this deep trough, is one like this, okay? So that is a slightly milder pattern, nothing crazy, but it doesn't get us anything other than overrunning, and that's going to depend on this little high pressure right here that I'll show you in a second for the end of the week. That could get this boundary a little bit further south, and if that track is a little further south, then we can get some snow here at the end of the week, all right? So it just delayed it by a couple days. That's all it did. It's not like it's not coming. And I understand you guys, see multiple sources. You're into social media. You follow different people that quite frankly, have hyped the living shit out of this coming, and at a certain time, and we're very confident there's going to be this big storm here on the 7th, and whatever. I try to make take a reasonable approach, not optimistic and not pessimistic, kind of a realistic approach in the middle somewhere, and I'll say, well, this is what I think is going to happen, and either it does or it doesn't, and we adjust accordingly, right? Well, and actually, I can go back to the end of November. Actually, the middle of November. This is a Weather Weekly snapshot from the Weather Weekly's video I did on November 13th. This is the second one I did of the year. We've been doing this for over a month now, right? So the last bullet point here, minor thread-the-needle type snow in far interior and northern locations through the first week of December, which we had. We had one of those, right? More likely December 2, week 2 onward area-wide, okay? So we weren't expecting, this is all the way back in the, right before the middle of November, we're expecting this not to occur. If you expect me to be 100% here on November 13th for when exactly it's going to arrive, I mean, that's part of the problem, right? I mean, it's not going to be exact. It's going to be pretty close. But week 2 onward is when we had the snow changes coming back in. And since some of you do define a pattern change as snowfall being a metric of that, that is all that really matters in that case, right? Because you have some snow shots coming after week 2. But before that, I knew the pattern was going to be too great. It's not going to be that great this coming week either. We're going up into about, the 12th, 13th, once we have another front come through. After that, I think, is when we have that more semi-permanent change, right? Here's that warmth on the GFS extended. Then after that, you have below average temperatures that are going to last. This goes all the way through the end of the year. Actually goes through January 1st. So you start off mild, then kind of near average or so this week, and then we just go back to below average after that. This is a 7-day loop that is going forward, going all the way through January 1st. European weeklies, similar idea. Cold settles in and becomes established. This is now Christmas right here. This is the week between Christmas and New Year's. This is New Year's. This is early January. It's still going, and then it finally starts to moderate as we head toward mid-month. I think we are going to have a January thaw this year at some point during the second half of the month, okay? So let's get into the snow chances at the end of the week. Now, this is the European run from last night. This has been consistently showing this for the last couple of runs where we have some snow across parts of our territory. This is more of a thread-the-needle situation. The GFS is much farther north with this. It did come down a little bit overnight. Let me go down to where we're at here. So it has it coming in on the different day Friday, and it might be a rain changing to snow situation for some areas. But the GFS has this rain all the way up to about here. Okay, this is all rain in this case because the track is further north initially with that, and the Canadian model is running it even further south, which doesn't get any of our region into any snow with this on this most recent run. The European model has been the one consistently showing kind of the middle ground, showing that snow chance over parts of our area here on Friday, and that could be something that produces a 2 to 4, 3 to 6 inch snowfall. Again, it's not going to be huge, but you can get accumulating snow out of this. And the reason it's doing this, and the differences between the models, this is looking at eastern Canada. So this is Quebec up here, right? We're down here on the bottom. And you have this, the entire shape up of how this is going to work out is going to be predicated on this high pressure right here. That is a 1,045 millibar high sitting right here over southeastern Quebec. And it's funneling in cold air to the surface down the spine of the Appalachians, right? So in this case, with that track, that's actually not too dissimilar among different models. They're all pretty much the same. You can get snow in this case, at least for the interior locations, because of this high pressure strength and position. Now, I'm just mark the H here for this is the European model, right? The GFS has it up here and 6 millibars weaker. So it's further removed and weaker, so that cold air damming doesn't have as much of an effect because it's too far removed from it, and that's why you have rain over our region. The Canadian is further southwest with it, not quite as strong as the European model, but it's enough that it shoves this thing further south like this on this track. And there has been several model runs over the past week that has been showing this scenario where it was suppressed south, and it's a very real possibility. If you look at the Canadian ensembles and the European ensembles, they're very, very close to each other, showing that we're going to get at least some accumulating snow in a similar manner to what the European model shows, which is something like this, okay? So GFS ensembles are not really on board with this idea yet. They're starting to trend this morning toward that. It was like really warm and rain. Now it's kind of like, just marginally warm and mostly rain, maybe some snow across the far northern tier. So it's kind of, we'll see where that goes going forward. Big thing about the GFS is it just got an upgrade here within the past 2 weeks, and it's to version 16.3. Whenever you have an upgrade to a model, the first couple of weeks it has to adjust to the overall pattern. So you'll have some really crazy swings run to run with different solutions, and you're seeing that with the GFS here over the past couple of weeks. So I wouldn't take the GFS and put it out front right now and say, well, maybe that probably has the right idea, okay? Because it's still adjusting to the pattern. It's going to take a couple more weeks yet before that finally settles in, so to speak, and then from that point forward, it'll be more reliable. But right now, because of that recent upgrade, it's changed a lot of things with the physics of the model. It's got to figure out observationally what's going on before it can figure out what's going on downstream. So it's still in that kind of in-between phase. So I wouldn't really... especially with the European ensemble and Canadian ensemble support for at least some accumulating snow across parts of our region. We're going to go with that idea that there is that opportunity here at the end of the week, and we'll continue to follow that throughout the week this week. As far as storm signals, this line here now, yes, we push this back a little bit, okay, whatever. This is now denoting what the middle of the month is. So all your snow chances, you might have something in here. This would be that system at the end of the week, right, if you get something in there. Okay. After that, after the 15th, going forward, There's plenty of storm chances in here, plenty of them. And we listed several of them in the long-range outlook that I did on Friday. And again, this just taking a look at that, the storm signal periods, we had the 12th, 11th, and 11th to 13th period. That does not look like it's going to be a wintry type thing. It might be initially at the onset and then going to rain. The second one, winter storm signal, again, this is coming into the after the middle of the month period where it's a lot more favorable with that P&A that I talked about, the ridging in the western U.S. Again, it doesn't have to be strongly positive. You just needed to get it out of negative territory and get it toward neutral. If it's near neutral, we can work with that. So you have a better chances as we get into the... there might be additional signals after this, too. I'm just going to list this one for now. Okay, this second one, though, I don't think. We did have this one on the 9th. By the way, this one on the 9th, 3 weeks ago, we had as a winter storm signal between the 6th and 8th, and people were asking me what happened to that. Well, that's it. That's the system. The one at the end of this week is that system. It's a day late, whatever, but it's still something we were able to sniff out in a long time in advance. So we'll see if that actually produces snow for the region at the end of the week. It's not a guarantee. None of these are guarantees. Okay, but at least the pattern is going to become more favorable, we think, once we get past the middle of the month. Taking a look at sea surface temperatures, we're still in a La Nina, and that is denoted by this blue area out here in the equatorial eastern Pacific, and it is largely unchanged from last week. Some minor changes and fluctuations, especially near the Peruvian coast. I will tell you that this graphic is produced every Monday, so this is now 6 days old that I'm going off these numbers. I will tell you in the past week, the temperature change over the past week has to come back up here in the new, even though it dropped the week before, it should come up next week because it looks like it's warming in that region compared to where it was the previous week. So there is some warming here. I do expect some gradual warming, very gradual, during the month of December. And then once we get some point in January, probably mid to late January, we're going to have a transition from La Nina to ENSO neutral. Okay, so it's going to be a different ball game downstream. The CPC is expecting this as well, and that is this area right here. So this 0.5 is where it intersects the red line, which is right here, right in here, negative 0.5 and up. This whole in between these lines, this is all ENSO neutral in between those two lines. Okay, so it gets to. It's expected sometime in January that we'll get to that. We'll get to an ENSO neutral, which is going to change the ball game downstream with all this talk about La Nina, third-year La Nina, all that stuff. Well, we're going to have that initially. So this chart that I made, that I've used in several Weather Weeklies videos so far, is just based on November and December. That's all I was concerned about, because once we get in January, we're going to have a transition to neutral. It's going to be a different thing altogether, right? So this is what we had in 75. Very little snow in November. Same thing here in November 2000. We didn't have any appreciable snow in November either. So it started off that year. This year started off comparable to both of those years. The question is, what is it going to do after that point? Are we going to get something that's just going to be some minor snow across the region, as shown here in 1975, or could it be something a little bit more significant, like shown here in 2000? Again, I'm not being a weenie here, because I really don't want the snow, but I'm kind of leaning in this direction. Leaning in that direction. Not necessarily for this stuff here, though. This is seasonal, and again, we don't know what's going to happen beyond that. It's going to depend on that transition from La Nina to ENSO neutral, but these numbers here are above average. Are we going to get that? Don't know. Let's work on December for now. Again, when I do these long-range outlooks, I don't do seasonal crap because it's a waste of time. But I do 5 to 6 weeks, and I do expect that we're going to have opportunities at least for this. Will we get to these numbers? Don't know. We'll see. Okay? It's going to depend what's going to happen here. Again, we have a chance at the end of the week. There'll be additional chances past mid-month. This is not the be-all, end-all. If you don't get this end-of-week system, this isn't like we need to start crying. Oh, no, here we go again. Another winter bust. It's not even winter yet. Relax, okay? It's only December 4th. After mid-month, which is still not winter, by the way, the chances are going to increase as long as this P&A cooperates the way we think it does, and it continues off in this direction toward neutral. That's going to help us when we get out here toward the middle of the month, okay? We just need to get it close to neutral, or, neutral will be good enough. We can work with that. We just can't work with it when it's negative like this, okay? So this was extended a little bit longer, didn't rise as fast, and that's partially why we're not dealing with the pattern change here on the 8th. It's going to happen a couple days later, 4 days later. Again, not a big deal, all right? In ENSO neutral winters, the pattern changes a little bit, okay? So if you were doing a winter outlook in October, let's say, all right, and you're expecting a La Nina, third-year La Nina winter, that's great. That'll be great for your forecast for November, December. After that point, it gets a little sketchy because things change a little bit. It's not a La Nina anymore, so how does the pattern behave at that point? There's a lot of different scenarios that can go on with a ENSO neutral. That could be a very good pattern or a very poor pattern. We don't know that yet. So for me to say what's going to happen in February, I'm not telling you that because I don't know. Again, 5 to 6 week lead time, and I do that for a reason and limit it to that as such. So just to summarize this week, okay? And again, back a couple weeks ago when I was doing this, I had this thing. This was a little bit, I've since learned that this gets cut off during the video, so I moved it a little bit. But again, we're expecting the December week 2 period onward to have the snow chances. I have not wavered from that this entire time, okay? So we're watching the end of the week for an overrunning wintry mix and snow scenario for parts of the region. And it's going to depend on that high pressure I talked about above, at how strong it is, what position it's in, and those changes will mean everything when it comes to what precipitation types each part of the region gets. If at all, if it's not squashed to the south or it ends up being rain, we'll see. I mean, it's possible. But, the middle ground right now is the European model. That just happens to be the one that's showing snow, so we certainly can't dismiss that idea. Additional window storm signals in the period following, the best chances are going to be near or past the middle of the month, but not necessarily bigger events. When you're still in a neutral PNA, it's more of like an overrunning type pattern, so we'll see. It's going to depend on a couple things, what the PNA is doing, and also how strong that block is over the west-based NAO. And position and strength of that high pressure in that region is going to dictate how much cold we get. We get suppressed storms in that pattern too, where you're kind of relatively dry, but if it was going to do anything, it would be snow type thing, right? So we'll see how that works. Colder temperatures relative to average will settle in for an extended period, but cold and snow lovers just need to be patient. It's only December 4th. The nonstop. Listen, we used to have a lot of moderators on the Facebook page, right? And we're down to one and sometimes two. Okay, I don't have time to babysit the Facebook page. So if you notice, when we do our snow maps, we'll turn the comments off, right? Because I don't have time to go through thousands of comments. I just don't. Okay. And they don't either. And it's usually people trying to, help other people putting the map in the comments. Well, that's not the point of what we're trying to do. We want you to go to the website and see it, and we're not making any money off Facebook, right? So we don't have time to babysit comments, can't get to all those comments. Yesterday I saw there was a bunch of comments about the pattern and how we're kicking the can down the road. Whatever. Who cares, right? Who cares? So I didn't even bother engaging with that because it's really, really pointless, all right? I don't have time to do that. We set up the Christmas tree yesterday. Went down and cut down the tree, put it up, did all the decorations yesterday, spent time with family. I don't have time to babysit the Facebook page, okay? So if you want to complain, knock yourself out, but don't expect a response from us most times because we don't have time for that stuff, okay? It's coming. Just be patient. I know a lot of you are snow lovers and you love the cold and whatever. Just be patient. It's coming, all right? It's only December 4th, okay? We'll continue to look at these each week and see where we're going from this point, but first focus is going to be on the end of this week with that potential system coming in. If you do have time to get to the My Pocket Meteorologist text alerts in premium form, don't wait on this either because once we get going, there's a lot of things we have to do to approve each sale that, it might, I don't want to be backlogged here. So get on this now so you're not waiting till last minute with a bunch of new signups and, then we're overwhelmed, okay? So I want everybody able to have this information when it becomes available and not have to wait for us to approve the form additions and things like that. The form is where we geek it out and really talk about we do the additional long-range outlooks every Monday and Wednesday. We do model analysis, comprehensive model analysis leading up to every single event. We are going to start model analysis on Monday for the end of the week if it's still there. So you can get into that for this week. And also the text alerts will happen prior to any system, whether it's a wintry system, rain system, whatever. You'll get the text alerts for those throughout the winter season at one low monthly rate. So that is this edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, December 4th. Join us again next week, and we might already have snow on the ground or be talking about a more imminent pattern change, which is looking like it's going to come within a day or two following next week's video. So we'll see where we're at, where we go in this next week with that, and take a look at any other storm signals going forward. Take care.